Good afternoon. I'm Jim Ray with the Masters in the American West, the road to the Autry Masters. I'm here with Masters sculptor Mick Doellinger. Nick and his wife Katrina live up in Weatherford, Texas, up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You see a view of Nick's rather sizable sculpture studio, along with a number of trophies hanging on the wall back there. Welcome, Nick. Thank you for joining us on Road to the Autry Masters.
Hi, Jim. Thanks.
So, and Mick is known to be a man of few words. So Mick, I like to start these conversations. I'm sorry, what?
Except at happy hour.
Except at happy hour. Okay. I like to start these conversations to learn a little bit about your background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you, what your artistic upbringing was, how you came to be a sculptor, and some of your influences.
Well, as a kid, I was just mainly interested in animals, and I drew and sketched and things like that. Then at about 11, I met a sculptor near where not too far from where I lived. A friend of my father's knew this guy, so he took me there, and that was very transformative. So I was pretty impressed with all that. From there, I got into other things later in life. Dabbled in different things. Some sculptures here and there in taxidermy, and then I got more serious into taxidermy, sculpting taxidermy mannequins, which wiring skeletons together as armatures and modeling clay over the top of them, and so on. Then it, I guess I did that for around about 20 years, and then I was at the time I'd also I think I did my first bronze sculpture around, I can't remember now whether it was 83 or 85. Was an elk sculpture, and my ex-wife at the time, she was interested in sculpting as well. So that's how I got into that. And then, sculpting the taxidermy mannequins, it just kept my hand in there until I got to the point where I realized I wanted to do it full time. I just wanted to do, fine art instead of scientific sculpture. So I came here and got a work visa and finally got a green card and so on. I've just started going to shows all across the country for quite a few years now. And then it was about 10 years, I guess, before or so, 6 or 8 years before I got invited into Masters. Mm-hmm. And I've been there since then, which I can't remember the year that was. But that's just a quick, explanation, I guess, of some of my background.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about what you've created for us for this upcoming Masters, and I'm gonna take these images and put them up behind us on the video. The ram skull, you've got a couple of versions of that. You've got a stainless steel version and a bronze version. What's the story with the ram skull?
I've done several other small skulls over the years, and I just thought about a ram skull for a while. And a lot of things I do, it percolates with me for quite a while before I don't just get an idea, think that's a good idea and run out and do it. No matter how good I think it is, I'm usually doing other things, and it takes time before I'm going to get around to that. So it percolates. The ram skull I've thought about for quite a while. I didn't want to make, like with the other skulls, I didn't want to make a replica skull or something that looks like a skull that's been scanned and printed out.
Just the horns.
Oh, hang on a second. I'll grab one.
Oh no, I've got a photo that's going to come up. Oh well.
Oh
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
There is one there. It's fairly heavily textured and a very sort of impressionistic skull.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. Your work features a highly textured style. How did you come about that particular style for your sculpture?
It just evolved over time. I thought back in the I think I must have been in the early 90s. I remember a guy who's a painter lived near me, an older man at the time. I mean, he would have been in his 70s or early 80s then. And he showed me a book, I think it was, of Paul Trubetskoy sculptures. And they were the first animal sculptures I'd seen that were looser, like the small pieces he did. I mean, his work varied. He did people as well, but the animals, the small impressionistic, which years later, I saw the Rembrandt Bugattis and his little pinch models of cows and things looked very much similar. Of course, I found out later on that Bugatti knew, Paul Trubetskoy was a friend of Bugatti's father. So obviously Bugatti was influenced by Trubetskoy, but that was the first animal sculptures I've seen. Before that, I thought, I obviously knew of Rodin and liked that looser type style of work. But I hadn't seen any animals like that. So that was the first time. And I remember trying to develop a looser style. And I have some older pieces now still. And I thought they were loose, and they don't look very loose now. But, it's just, you just evolve, you go along. And I don't try to focus on a particular style, like some of my textures from a few years ago vary from how they look now, and a lot of people just see a loose texture, think they're all the same, like a smooth surface, but it's not the case, of even other sculptors as well that, have loose surface textures. They all vary,
Yeah.
So that's basically how I got to working in a loose texture, really.
Okay. So this next piece I'm going to bring up is this is actually in its clay form. I guess the actual piece is being smelted at the foundry. Is that what you call it?
No, it's been cast.
Yeah, it's being cast at the foundry, right?
You would say cast.
Cast. And this is a bull, not a steer. We're not going to get into the differences between the two of them. But you want to tell me a little bit about the bull?
The bull is a Corriente bull, which are the cattle in Mexico. They were brought from Spain to Mexico. Oh, yeah. It's what the bulls are what they use in Mexico and bullfights and that. Here in the US, they use the steers for team roping events across the country, steer roping and such, because they get thick horns, early on in life, sort of thing. So they're good for that, and they're lighter built. They're not real large cattle, but the bulls are, the typical fighting bulls in Mexico. Anyway, so I've thought about bulls for quite a while, and I've done other bulls, longhorn bulls, in the past. The fighting bull is just more, I guess, it's just, how could I say? It's like such a symbol of power. And just, when you look at pictures and in films and even see the animals running around, how they, in an arena sort of setting, how they hold themselves, how high they lift their head and that, like a lot of bulls, you look at Angus bulls, but they got their head held very low sort of thing because of the weight on them, because, they've been so modified genetically over the, the years just to produce beef sort of thing, whereas the Corriente, like the other Criollo cattle of Spain, are closer, I believe, to the Auric, the original wild cattle of Europe that all the modern European cattle have evolved from. So this is like a product of natural selection, a bull like this. So that's why it appealed to me. It's also, I guess, everybody takes something else out of it. If you're a stockbroker, you're on Wall Street, you think about it in a different way,
Yep.
But it's the typical classic bull.
So when you're prizing a subject, how do you size it up and decide that this is something that I want to represent in a three-dimensional sculpture?
I'm not sure what you mean by how do I size it up.
Well, how do you decide this is something I want to sculpt? when you're looking at
Oh,
something?
well, like I said before, I have these ideas for a long time, and some ideas I've had for a few years before I've finally done something in that, and forgot about them and got back to them, or had them written down in a notepad somewhere and then saw it again. I thought, I forgot all about this. But so it's just something I see like that, like it can be an experience. I mean, in this case, I was on a ranch with some people I know that breed these cattle in New Mexico, and we took a lot of photos and that in the yards and that, and so that sort of gave me the impetus, I guess, to actually go and get something done, straight away there. Whereas, obviously I've thought about it for a long time. So yeah, that was the trigger, I guess, that pushed me to do something now instead of waiting another year or two. But I have other things that I just sit on for a while as well,
As you
So-
look at the arc of your career as a professional artist, do you sense that your practice, your technique, your whatever is changing over time, or it's pretty much steady and you tend to do things the same way? Is it evolving? How's that long-term arc look to you?
I think I'm evolving all the time. I mean, it's subtle little things. I mean, it's not like anything. It's not like I'm changing style completely or anything like that. But it all just slightly changes here and there. I mean, many years ago, I used to make my armatures and measure everything out. I'd have skeletal measurement charts, of animals, and I would whittle bones out of wood to the scale that I wanted to make the sculpture and connect them onto a wire armature with like dental floss or some monofilament. And so I had a little articulating skeleton. So where I bent the legs, I would bend exactly where the joints are. Well, I don't bother with that anymore either. So now I pretty much will just use a pair of calipers, and if I've got a picture, can get a photo of an animal that's side on perfectly, square on level ground. I'll just take calipers and take a length of the head, and then compare that to the length of the scapula and other bones, and and the length of the whole body and so on, and just work it out from there. So I'm less fussed with trying to make it exactly. It's just got to look right for me. And if I have to exaggerate something slightly, I will, to make it look better.
Right.
So I don't want to be trapped by certain measurements there.
Yeah, you've talked
So,
about that in the past in some of our conversations, where what the final representation looks like may not exactly reflect the animal because of the way we see things and so forth. And so you may use a little artistic license to sculpt it into a way that looks the way that we expect it to look. I don't know if that's a fair explanation of what you were saying.
Yeah, no, exactly. I've often thought, like, if you look at sculpture, like portrait sculpture, even, like how difficult as that is at times. I mean, and some sculptors will do an exact replica of a person that's sitting for them, and then some will study the person's features and will enhance certain aspects of it to bring out the character stronger. Just like if you imagine you get a photo taken, a portrait, and then you have a very skilled portrait painter come in and do the same portrait off the photo. He's going to notice certain little things in somebody's cheeks or jowls or ears or something, and he's going to put some shadows there a little bit and just pick that up. And eventually, if you looked at the portrait, the painted portrait done by a good portrait artist, and a great photo, the painted portrait is going to look much more like the person, as we all think of the person. Right. When you see photos of yourself or a friend in different locations, and that sometimes you think, I wouldn't recognize you in that picture. You look totally different.
Yep.
So in a portrait, I think and that's what I'm trying to capture in an animal, not like an individual personality of an animal. Like, with a bull, what is the image of a bull? I mean, if what I've tried to do is, if you think bull. So you say that word, and what would be the image in somebody's mind? I mean, generally you'd think of like cartoon type bulls or whatever, or the Wall Street bull or something like that. Is big in the front end. I mean, big neck. They're a big, powerful animals. They're full steam ahead. They have this vigor. So what is the image? Now that could be abstract. It could be in so many different ways, but you can still capture that essence of that animal without doing it, in ultra realism, So that's what I've tried to do. Not to say the anatomy is all there, it's pretty straight anatomy with a loose texture,
Oh, very good.
So,
well, Mick, that's our time for the day. I sure do appreciate your taking some time to talk with us and tell us about your art. I hope that we'll see you and Katrina at the Masters show in February. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. We're looking forward to the show. We'll see you there.
That'll be great.
All right. Bye.